It was a crisp Christmas Eve, the stars glittering like diamonds over the snowy peaks of Alaska. Santa Claus and his trusty team of reindeer were making great time, swooping through the skies and delivering joy to the world. The sleigh was piled high with brightly wrapped presents. Santa hummed a merry tune as his sleigh soared through the frosty Alaskan sky, the stars twinkling above him. The reindeer pulled with strength and precision, their bells jingling cheerfully. Below, the vast wilderness stretched in every direction, a blanket of untouched snow glistening in the moonlight. But suddenly, a powerful gust of wind swept through the sky, rattling the sleigh. Santa's beard whipped around his face, and he gripped the reins tightly. "Easy there, team. Steady as she goes." The wind howled again, this time with a fierce, biting cold that seemed to cut through even Santa's thick red coat. The sleigh jolted violently, and a loud crack rang out. Santa twisted in his seat and saw with dismay that the left runner of the sleigh had splintered, sending a cascade of golden sparks flying into the night. "Oh dear," Santa exclaimed, his jolly demeanor giving way to concern. "Dasher, pull right. Comet, slow us down. Rudolph, light the way. Carefully now." But the situation only grew worse. The cracked runner caused the sleigh to tilt precariously, making it harder for the reindeer to maintain their rhythm. Santa's sack of presents shifted dangerously, spilling a few brightly wrapped packages into the wind. "Hold tight, everyone," Santa shouted, trying to steer the sleigh back on course. The sleigh began to lose altitude rapidly, the broken runner acting like a drag chute, slowing them unevenly. The reindeer strained against their harnesses, their breath steaming in the cold night air. Rudolph's glowing nose flickered as he struggled to lead the team through the turbulent winds. With a final lurch, the sleigh dipped toward the snowy forest below. Santa's heart pounded. "Brace yourselves," he called out. The sleigh skimmed the tops of the pine trees, scattering snow and needles in every direction. With a deafening thump, it slammed into a small clearing, skidding wildly across the snow. The sleigh tipped onto its side as one of the harness straps snapped, and Santa was tossed into a snowbank with a muffled poof. The reindeer landed in a heap, their harnesses tangled. Rudolph let out a sharp cry of pain as he stumbled and collapsed, his front leg bent awkwardly beneath him. Santa scrambled to his feet, brushing snow off his coat and rushing to his beloved reindeer. "Rudolph, are you all right?" Santa asked, his voice filled with worry. Rudolph whimpered softly, his glowing nose dim as he tried to lift his injured leg. "Oh, my boy," Santa murmured, stroking Rudolph's fur gently. He turned to check on the other reindeer, who were shaken but unharmed, then surveyed the damage to the sleigh. The broken runner was completely shattered, and one of the harness buckles had snapped clean off. His sack of presents, though still mostly intact, lay spilled across the snow. Santa sank to his knees, the weight of the situation settling heavily on his shoulders. "What am I going to do?" he muttered to himself. "Christmas depends on this sleigh. Without it, I can't deliver the presents." As Santa fretted, a low rumbling noise echoed through the forest. He froze, straining his ears. The sound came again, deeper this time, and closer. It was like a growl, but not an unfriendly one. The hairs on the back of Santa's neck prickled. He turned toward the sound and saw two glowing amber eyes watching him from the shadows. "Who's there?" Santa called, standing tall and trying to sound brave. The rumbling grew louder and the snow crunched under heavy footsteps. Then, emerging from the shadows, came a massive, shaggy figure. Santa's eyes widened in astonishment. "Could it be?" he whispered. The creature stepped fully into the clearing, its enormous frame towering over Santa. It was a Sasquatch, its thick hair shimmering faintly in the moonlight. Behind it came a slightly smaller Sasquatch and a young one, their eyes curious but not threatening. Santa stared in awe, his mouth hanging open. "Well, I'll be jingle-belled," he muttered. "It's really you." The big Sasquatch stepped forward, his amber eyes glowing in the moonlight. "You must be Santa Claus," he said in a deep, rumbling voice. "I've heard tales about you." Santa blinked in surprise. You know who I am?" The Sasquatch grinned. "Of course. I'm Gronk. This is my mate, Mara, and our son, Pip." He gestured to the smaller Sasquatch, who was carrying an armful of pine cones and a carved wooden toy shaped like a bird. Mara stepped closer, her expression softening as she saw Rudolph lying in the snow. "Your reindeer is hurt," she said gently. "He'll need care." Santa nodded. "Yes, he's injured from the crash. But forgive me, I thought Sasquatches were only legends." Gronk chuckled, a sound like distant thunder. "Funny, we've always thought the same about you." Mara smiled. "Our kind tells stories of a man in red who flies through the sky with reindeer, bringing joy to the world. But we didn't believe it was true until tonight." Pip bounced excitedly, pointing at the sleigh. "You really fly? With that?" Santa laughed, his belly shaking. "I do indeed. Or at least I used to, until I crashed here." He sighed, gesturing to the broken sleigh. "I don't suppose you'd know how to repair a magical runner." Gronk exchanged a look with Mara. "We might," he said. "Our family has lived here for generations. We know the land and its treasures." Santa chuckled, stroking his beard. "You know, when I was much younger, well before I was Santa Claus, I heard tales of great hairy creatures who roamed the wildest parts of the world. Back then, I didn't believe they were real. I thought they were just stories meant to entertain children on long, snowy nights." Pip stepped closer, his eyes wide with interest. Santa continued, warming to his tale. "Once when I was just an apprentice toy maker in the North Pole, I found an old book about mythical creatures. There was a whole chapter about you, describing how you lived in hidden valleys and snowy forests, keeping away from humans. The book said that you were kind, wise, and fiercely protective of your families. But I still wasn't sure if I believed it. After all, I'd never seen a Sasquatch myself. But one night, long before I had reindeer or a sleigh, I was delivering toys on foot to a remote village. It was snowing hard, and the path was treacherous. Suddenly, I slipped and tumbled down a hill. I thought I'd freeze before I got back up. Just as I was losing hope, I saw enormous footprints in the snow leading to a cave. When I followed them, I found fresh berries and a warm fire, as if someone, or something, had left them there just for me. I never saw who it was, but I always wondered if it was a Sasquatch looking out for a clumsy young toy maker." Pip looked up at Santa with wide, sparkling eyes and tugged at his red coat, chattering excitedly. Santa crouched down, looking the young one in the eye. "You remind me of the children I visit every year," Santa said gently. "Curious, full of wonder, and full of good cheer. It's wonderful to meet you all at last." The Sasquatches and Santa shared a warm moment of understanding, their shared histories as legends bringing them closer together. Santa's heart swelled with gratitude. "Thank you, my friends. Together, we'll make sure Christmas is saved." As the family led Santa toward their hidden cave, Pip skipped ahead, tossing snowballs in the air and making little joyful growls. Santa chuckled to himself, marveling at the magic of the moment. Here in the snowy wilderness of Alaska, two legends had finally met, not as myths, but as friends. Santa, the reindeer, and the Sasquatch family walked through the snowy forest until they reached a hidden cave. Inside, it was surprisingly warm, with the flicker of a fire casting long shadows on the walls. The Sasquatches had a workbench covered in tools and an assortment of strange and beautiful objects crafted from wood, stone, and ice. As Santa and the Sasquatch family gathered in the warm glow of the cave, the big Sasquatch, Gronk, studied the broken sleigh runner carefully. His hair glistened with melted snow as he ran a massive hand over the fractured piece, his amber eyes narrowing in concentration. His mate Mara crouched beside Rudolph, whose red nose flickered faintly like a fading lantern. Their son Pip buzzed with energy, darting around the cave and gathering tools from every corner. "This is going to be a challenge," Santa admitted, rubbing his chin thoughtfully. "The sleigh's magic is tied to its parts. Without my North Pole tools, I don't know how we'll repair it." Gronk straightened up, his voice deep but steady. "We can help. Our family knows these woods and the magic it holds, but we'll need to split up to gather what's needed." Mara nodded and added, "While you and Gronk handle the repairs, I'll stay here with Rudolph. He'll need care before he can fly again." "Thank you, Mara," Santa said, his voice filled with gratitude. "I don't know what I'd do without you." Pip hopped eagerly on the spot. What about me? What do I do?" Gronk smiled, the corners of his mouth curling slightly under his thick hair. "You're coming with us, Pip. You'll have an important job." He turned to Santa. "Ready?" "Lead the way, Gronk," Santa said, grabbing his coat. "Let's save Christmas." While Gronk, Pip, and Santa left to gather materials, Mara turned her full attention to Rudolph. The reindeer's injured leg lay awkwardly beneath him, and he winced as Mara gently pressed around the swollen area. "You'll be okay," Mara said softly, her voice warm and soothing. She moved to a shelf carved into the stone wall of the cave and selected bundles of dried herbs. "A little rest, a little healing magic, and you'll be good as new." She crushed a handful of frost mint leaves between her palms, releasing a sharp, cooling aroma, and added glowing berries to the mix. The result was a shimmering paste that Mara applied carefully to Rudolph's leg. She wrapped it with strips of soft bark that Pip had gathered earlier, her hands working with practiced skill. Rudolph let out a soft snort, his nose glowing slightly brighter. Santa, returning briefly to check on the progress, was amazed. "You're a healer, Mara?" he asked. She glanced up with a modest smile. "It's a skill passed down in our family. Healing is a gift of the forest." "Well, it's a gift indeed," Santa said, tipping his hat. "Thank you, Mara. We'll need his light before the night is through." Gronk led Santa deep into the forest, his powerful strides crunching through the snow. He scanned the towering trees until he found a silver birch that shimmered faintly in the moonlight. "This one," Gronk said, resting a hand on the trunk. "It's strong, flexible, and has a touch of magic." Gronk unsheathed a sharp stone blade from his belt and began chopping. The rhythmic thwack-thwack echoed through the forest, but as the tree began to fall, a low growl broke through the air. Santa froze, his eyes widening as a massive bear lumbered into the clearing. "Stay back," Gronk said calmly, stepping between Santa and the bear. He puffed out his chest and let out a thunderous roar, shaking the branches overhead. The bear hesitated, then backed away slowly, deciding it wasn't worth the challenge. "Impressive," Santa said, his voice filled with admiration. Gronk chuckled. Sometimes size has its advantages. Meanwhile, Pip scurried ahead of Santa to a grove of enchanted trees, their branches dripping with glistening ice shards. "These hold the magic we need," Pip called, his voice ringing with excitement. He climbed a tree with ease, his sharp claws gripping the icy bark. High in the branches, he spotted a glowing shard of magical ice, but as he reached for it, the branch groaned under his weight. "Be careful, Pip," Santa called, his heart racing. Pip glanced down with a mischievous grin. "Don't worry, Santa. I've got this." He shifted his weight carefully, stretched his arm further, and snapped the shard free. Climbing down, he handed the ice to Santa with a triumphant smile. "You're a brave one, Pip," Santa said, clapping the young Sasquatch on the back. While Gronk and Pip collected their materials, Santa wandered to a grove where golden sap dripped from tree trunks. The sap, known in legend as starbinder, was a magical adhesive used to hold enchanted objects together. Santa pulled out a tin and began collecting it carefully. A sudden gust of wind swirled around him, carrying whispers that sounded like voices. Santa paused, looking around nervously. The shadows of the forest seemed to shift and move, but when he squinted, they disappeared. "Just tricks of the forest," he muttered, shaking his head. He filled the tin and hurried back to the cave. Back in the cave, the family reunited with their treasures. Gronk carried the silver birch, Pip held the magical ice, and Santa brought the golden sap. Mara had finished tending to Rudolph, who stood proudly, his nose glowing brightly once more. "Let's get to work," Gronk said, his voice firm but enthusiastic. Mara shaved the magical ice quartz with a sharp stone, shaping it into a sleek runner. "It needs to be precise," she explained, "or the magic won't hold." Gronk heated the golden sap over the fire, creating a sticky, glowing adhesive. Pip eagerly handed Santa bolts and fasteners made from enchanted wood. Santa worked alongside them, tightening the bolts by hand as Mara attached the runner to the sleigh. The teamwork was seamless, each of them contributing their unique skills. As the final piece clicked into place, the sleigh glimmered with restored magic. Santa stepped back, his eyes shining with gratitude. "You've done it," he said. "You've saved Christmas." "Ho, ho, ho, we've got to go," Santa said, climbing into the sleigh. "But wait, you deserve something special." He reached into his sack and pulled out 3 gifts. For Gronk, he gave a finely carved axe handle made of enchanted wood. For Mara, a string of shimmering lights that glowed like the northern stars. And for young Pip, he handed over a mechanical snow globe that played a soft, tinkling melody. Pip hugged Santa's leg tightly, and the family waved as the sleigh soared back into the sky. Santa's new runner worked like a charm. The sleigh zipped through the night faster than ever, and Santa managed to deliver all the presents just in time. As he returned to the North Pole, he couldn't stop thinking about the Sasquatch family. "Perhaps I should stop in Alaska more often," Santa chuckled to himself, stroking his beard. From that night on, every Christmas Eve, Santa would leave a small gift in the clearing where he had landed, a token of gratitude for his big, hairy friends. And somewhere deep in the Alaskan wilderness, the Sasquatch family would gather around their fire, sharing stories about the magical night they helped Santa Claus and saved Christmas.